Most of the people I work with benzodiazepines, the majority have taken them as prescribed by physician and have no addiction personalities. No, it's actually more of the physical dependence.
Hmm.
In fact, this neurological that we discovered in our research was this neurological condition, and we actually labeled it and everything, and it's become more regular now to be called that, and it's more identified. But it's this long-lasting. You mentioned tolerance, which is perfect, and you have the withdrawal phase with all drugs coming off them and people go through that. One of the unique things we've seen with benzodiazepines, not saying it doesn't also happen with some other drugs, but we saw this with benzos, was this protracted state of neurological dysfunction.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up.
Hi, guys. Welcome back to Neff Inspiration, my show on YouTube and as a podcast with me, your host, Stefan Neff. Today, I've got the pleasure and privilege to talk to D.E. Foster. Dee is a man who, in the past, has been exposed and taken benzodiazepines, as so many people around the world have. But most of us, when we initially get exposed to them, we don't really think too much about it. And as a doctor, I have to admit that me in the past and so many of my colleagues are probably not so great in talking about how to discontinue medications down the line. So unfortunately, some drugs can be a real bitch to come off, and that is antidepressants, that is some of the other psychoactive drugs. And tonight we're gonna have a deep dive into benzodiazepines. Dee, thank you so much for coming onto my show and being the man who you are, speaking from your heart and exposing your own journey so that others can learn from it. Welcome.
Thanks, Stefan. It's really nice to be here.
But see, no one ever wants to be on drugs. And when we are young, when we are, teenagers, testosterone, bulletproof, no one thinks of any medications. How did you end up being basically offered a medication that was clearly there that to help you with the problems that you had and that your doctor thought, I can do something here.
Yeah, I'd be happy to answer that question. Yeah, I was actually always had stomach problems for a long time. It was one of my chronic issues, and along the way, a general practitioner I went to, I think assumed that anxiety or stress may be a factor, and
Mhm.
so prescribed me Klonopin, which is one of the more powerful benzodiazepines. And I wound up taking it for 12 years without even thinking about it. I just, he said this was going to help, and I took it. And it wasn't until I relocated, went to a new doctor, and she prescribed me Prozac to help me come off the Klonopin. And I had no idea that I needed to come off the Klonopin. And that's when I decided to go online and I found out these possible complications and I had my panic attack and had all that fun stuff tied with it. So that started that whole journey of coming off the medication and then working in this community and helping others that are doing similar things like that. So,
And if we think about it, if we go back in history, there was a time when Mummy's Little Helper was very much
yes.
pushed by the doctors. Were
Oh, yeah.
figures around that about 10-15% of the American population, once upon a time in the 70s, 80s, were on benzodiazepines.
Right.
And
Yeah.
there is famous statements of the head of psychiatry, I believe, of New York University, who went out there to say benzodiazepines, diazepam, and alprazolam, I think was the other
Mhm.
one that they pushed at that time. They are not addictive.
Of course not.
And
Of
then we
course
all
not. And
laugh. Yeah, exactly.
yeah,
Nowadays,
back in 1960, they came out with chlordiazepoxide, which was Librium.
yeah.
And then soon after that came your favorite diazepam, Valium, which was 2.5 times more powerful than chlordiazepoxide. And now we have Xanax, like you said, alprazolam, along with Klonopin, and these are 20 times as powerful as diazepam. And so what they did was they made them more powerful. I don't know how they thought that was going to make things better, but it sure
I
didn't.
mean, powerful in its own right only means that you have to take less of the medication to achieve the
Yeah,
same effect.
right.
So in principle,
Yes.
that's probably not such a bad thing. Having said that, I think it is the insidious path of the good effects of the benzodiazepines, of this group of drugs, that really alter the way we look at things. So here you were, and you had obviously stomach problems.
Mhm.
And what did the benzodiazepines do? What did the medication do? Did it help you?
It, it did help me, I think, somewhat. I didn't notice it significantly, but I think it helped me. It helped keep me a little bit calmer and a little
Mm,
bit, more centered for a while. I think I probably hit tolerant. I didn't realize I was having issues on the drug until I learned about coming off and I looked back and I saw, and we've seen this with a lot of people, was that they don't associate the symptoms, these de novo symptoms we have from the drugs with the drug because nobody's ever told them this is a possibility.
mm,
And so it's not until you look back and you realize, oh my God, this, and this were probably tolerance when I hit the drug. When it came off the drug,
uh,
all hell broke loose. And so, I had a hard time tapering, but I jumped off of a 1/4 milligram of Klonopin, which is 5 milligrams of diazepam, which is a big jump.
mm,
I didn't really know better. And then the next 3 years were extreme.
wow.
Just tons of symptoms. I've had over 70 symptoms, neurological symptoms, and still have it today. I'm 11 years benzo free, and I still have,
Mm,
in fact, right today, I had neuropathy kicking in today. I think because of some magnetic disturbances from the sun or something really kicking in.
mm.
But yeah, my nervous system went pretty much haywire today, and that still happens to me sometimes. So,
That's interesting. And let's talk a bit about the pharmacology
yeah.
of these drugs, because many of these medications, they are very potent. And some of them have
Mhm.
quite a long half-life, so many
Right.
hours. And we keep taking them. And so there is a certain build-up in the body, and
Yeah.
your cells initially say, "Oh, that's quite nice." But then
Yeah.
there is this nasty bit of tolerance developing. Tolerance is
Mhm.
defined in order to achieve the same effect, you have to give more and more and more of the drug.
Right.
We see that in alcohol. So
Oh
there are
yeah.
some people, oh, he can really hold his liquor, he
Yeah.
can drink others under the table. Well, that only means that he is tolerant and that
You
the
got it.
same,
You got it.
okay, the
Yep.
same effect that maybe once upon a time one beer had, he now needs a case of beer. And that really
Yep.
says already a lot about
Yeah.
addiction and dependence. These are, and I
And
think we
that's
need,
a big thing we deal with, which is that differentiating between the two, because
isn't it?
there's a whole world of addiction. I work closely with them with the substance use disorders and all those kinds of things.
Yeah.
But most of the people I work with benzodiazepines, the majority have taken them as prescribed by physician and have no addiction personalities. No, it's actually more of the physical dependence.
Mm,
In fact, this neurological that we discovered in our research was this neurological condition, and we actually labeled it and everything, and it's become more regular now to be called that, and it's more identified. But it's this long-lasting. You mentioned tolerance, which is perfect, and you have the withdrawal phase with all drugs coming off them, and people go through that. One of the unique things we've seen of benzodiazepines, not saying it doesn't also happen with some other drugs, but we saw this with benzos, was this protracted state of neurological dysfunction.
mm,
And that's what we've seen unique to it. And we're starting to see it some other psychotropics too, but that one we really saw within benzodiazepines. And that's the part that they didn't expect. Most people thought acute withdrawal would last 30 days, at top, a week,
mm.
2 weeks. But once the chemicals were out of your body,
Yeah.
like you mentioned, then you're done. Well, that wasn't the case. And that wasn't the case. And we saw that happening. And so with this physical dependence or this neurological dysfunction, that's continuing. We believe it's a factor with the GABA receptors. The GABA A receptors within the body get down regulated. And these are, and these get down regulated after constant, effect from the benzodiazepines. So it makes them less receptive to the GABA. For people that don't know, GABA is the calming neurotransmitter within the body. And as that isn't received as well, we can't calm ourselves as well. So when you take that away, now these receptors are down regulated. They no longer can receive this calming message anymore. And we get in this constant excitatory state. And so we're always revved up. And that's kind of, where I am off and on a lot for the last 11 years. I'm just in this almost almost a fake fight or flight constant situation. And it does a number on you, and there's a lot of down symptoms that happen from this because, as we know, the nervous system affects everything. And so when your nervous system isn't functioning quite right, It shows up in muscle tension, it shows up in headaches, it shows up in cognitive decline, it shows up in memory loss, it shows up in akathisia, it shows up in tinnitus, it shows up in all these other symptoms because the nervous system affects those. And that's
Having
what
said
a
that,
lot of these people go through.
it's
Yeah,
beautiful that you pointed out. Having said that, if I was to look at the symptom complex that you have just described,
yeah.
you could say, well, hang on, that sounds a bit like menopause, or that sounds a bit like long
Exactly.
COVID, or
Yeah.
that sounds a little bit like the CNS manifestations of fibromyalgia,
Hmm.
or of actually mycotoxin disease, heavy
Yep.
metal intoxication. These are all diseases that are chameleons and that can hide in
Exactly.
multiple ways and often have
Which is,
very diffuse kind of
yes,
weird overlapping symptoms that can be hard to be nailed down, where often doctors think,
yeah,
you're right, it's all in the head. And I think
exactly. Yeah,
that's
exactly. And I tell you one thing I learned through this was compassion and empathy for people who have conditions that aren't well recognized by the medical establishment. And that's what we came through with this. And a lot of times, people with bind, and that's the term we use now for the long-lasting protracted condition, but people with bind are often misdiagnosed and often diagnosed with MS, with Parkinson's, with fibromyalgia. They're often diagnosed with other conditions
exactly.
because they don't know about this protracted condition because the research never looked for it. It never looked for a protracted complication outside of 30 days of these drugs. And so it never saw it. And we just did a scoping review we just published earlier this year that looked for that. And we found out it's almost not it's we looked over 11,000 studies
Mm.
and we came up with 40 that even looked that long that might have some signs of this condition. Most of them never looked beyond 30 days off the drugs. And
Which is, of
so,
course, a huge thing. And I applaud
yes.
you, I commend you for actually putting that work together. But let me play devil's advocate.
Hmm.
I have, as a functional medicine doctor, I've got a strong interest in toxicology,
Right.
and especially the modern toxicology, where we don't just look at one kind of drug or compound and how it goes from not killing you to all the way up to those of killing you. But I understand that we are living in a very toxic soup, that we are
Right.
bombarded with microplastics, that many of us, I mean, in beautiful New Zealand, we have got a high humidity. So there are so many buildings, houses, apartments are affected by
Mold, nitrogen.
mold. So
Yes.
mold
Yes.
toxicity
Hmm.
would be quite easily explaining all the symptoms that you have just described. Have you in your studies ruled those things out?
We
Did you
have, we
further
had
on?
a large enough, yeah, we had a large enough sample to rule most of that stuff out. What we found that was unique in answer to that is the general condition that these drugs have created is a sense of hypersensitivity.
Hmm,
And so when people have had mold, have had other conditions,
yeah,
the reaction of people are much stronger because we're
absolutely.
already in this hypersensitive state. So I'm glad you brought that up because we've seen that normal reactions to these wind up being two, three, five times what they would have been because we already have a somewhat dysfunctional nervous system.
Absolutely.
And so, yeah,
Yeah.
but you're absolutely right. We always are looking for other possible causes, and to be a good researcher, of
Mm,
course, we have to state our limitations. We have to make it clear,
mm,
what the possible limitations of our studies have, and we've
yeah.
always done that.
Mm.
But we've had enough evidence. I mean, this has been in 1979, Senator Ted Kennedy here in the U.S. actually spoke to a Senate subcommittee on the dangers of benzodiazepines. That was, a long time ago.
Yeah.
And nothing really happened. Instead, what they did was they came back and they made them stronger,
Hmm. I hear
and
you.
that was the answer. So, but nothing really happened. So this has been known for some time,
Yeah.
just not in the last 5 years. We've really made significant advancements in research and in recognition from the medical establishment. In 2020, here in the U.S., the Food and Drug Administration actually came out and finally acknowledged in their black box warning these drugs should only be taken short term,
Hmm.
and that long-term take use can cause that. And I was on a panel that just published the first guidelines on deprescribing that just came out from American Society of Addiction Medicine. And I
Oh,
was on
cool.
that panel. And we just published that 3 months ago. And it finally actually states the complications and even recommends how to come off the drugs through slow
Beautiful.
taper, through the processes. So what I'm trying to say is the medical establishment is finally catching on. They're finally saying, wait a minute, you're right. We recognize this. The research is there. It's valid.
Yeah.
And, it's going to take a long time for each doctor to get that message. That's the hard part, as you probably know in your industry.
Yeah.
But at least the major medical associations have recognized this is an issue and they're starting to make some changes accordingly. So that's a huge step we hadn't had before.
Brilliant. Brilliant.
Yeah.
And here we are, often enough, being sidetracked in society by the more obvious addictions out there. And I'm not even talking alcohol, I'm talking now about the opioid crisis that you have had in its
Oh, yeah.
third or fourth version now. And
Yeah.
the
And then
new,
fentanyl on the way. Yeah.
well, exactly. I mean, the synthetic or the fentanyl crisis, if you want to call it like that, and all the chemical analogs
Hmm.
that came from China through Mexico
Yes.
and flooded
Yeah.
into the United States, kind of a chemical warfare. That started 2014. And we
Mhm.
see that there are so many sad pictures and films where you see
ridiculous. Yeah.
people on the street standing there like zombies because they have mixed it with some weird and wonderful
Yeah.
other drugs. So this is the obvious stuff. That is the stuff that we see. But the
Hmm.
benzodiazepines, they're more quiet, just as much as
They are
chronic
more quiet.
cannabis.
Yeah. I
Just
can
as
tell
much.
you actually,
Yeah.
yeah, I can actually tell you with the opioids that you brought up. I was glad you did because I actually co-founded and co-chaired what's a group called the Benzodiazepine Action Work Group. And we were part of, in the state of Colorado, the Colorado Consortium for Prescription Drug Abuse Prevention,
Yeah.
which primary focus was opioids. So I was working in a subgroup of this organization that was really focused on opioids. What we realized was we learned a lot from them. And so we kind of came along, and what they were doing, they would do some legislation here in the state of Colorado, and we would tack benzos onto it. And we would get that to be part of it. We did that in House Bill 1276. And so we get that stuff to move along, and we get benzodiazepines to have some limitations in place on prescribing to help
Nice.
reduce the overprescribing of it. But like you said, the opioids kind of led that way. And we said, hey, we can tack on here and follow your lead because you've gotten some awareness now. And we're trying to get that. And I think that's helped a lot. But yeah, the opioids, the combination of the meds, like you were starting to say, I deal with a lot of people who are polydrugged, is the term we use for it, but it means are multiple in that cocktail.
Mm.
And people who are on, an SSRI, an SNRI, psychotropic, they're on, and a benzo and something else and some gabapentin thrown in there. And it's just ridiculous because we
Mm.
have no idea what drug is causing their problems,
Exactly. I
and
love it. I
they
love
take
it what you're
sometimes they're
saying.
taking, yeah,
Yeah.
they're sometimes taking one drug to counter the effects of the other drug. And it's these cocktails, and I work with people whose path looks almost, I don't want to say hopeless, but looks very long because they have to figure out which drug they would want to taper, start that process, and really do one at a time to
Yeah.
get themselves back to a stable state again.
Yeah.
And it's a long path.
I love that. If you were to compare the milder addictions, and this is a stupid way of putting it, but I haven't yet found another way, i.e., not the injecting some horse tranquilizers or shit up your vein,
Yeah.
but instead, if we were to think about, let's say, the legalization of cannabis. You must have a similar scenario with some young men and women who
Hmm.
are basically stuck on cannabis, and for whatever reasons, they become less and less productive. They become
Yeah.
the typical cliche that sits on the couch. We have got here in New Zealand, there's a lot of cannabis, and if the higher up
Yeah.
north you go in our country, there are suggestions that our youth up north, where there's typically more Maori and there's typically
Okay.
more rural, about 95% do use cannabis regularly.
Okay.
And I
Wow.
think there is clearly some concern about that.
Well,
Whilst on the
especially in
one
the
hand,
youth,
functional
especially in the
medicine.
youth.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely. In functional medicine, we recognize that there are that some of the cannabis components have got tremendous benefit to the body.
Mhm.
No two ways around it. So many pain patients, they can only
Oh, yeah.
function because they are on cannabis components, typically the
Mhm.
cannabinoids, not the THC. So
Yeah.
there are certain parts we need to clearly distinguish there.
Yeah.
So let's accept all the good things, but there is also a
Yeah.
dark underbelly when it comes to
Yep.
cannabis. Now you have got that legal in Colorado.
Yes.
So what is your experience there comparing that, let's say,
Yeah.
with SSRIs, let's say with
Yeah.
benzodiazepines?
I think that's a fair question. Actually, I can personally speak to that. I tried um, both THC a little bit. I tried CBD because we were that first state, us and I think Oregon quickly after, were the first states to legalize without a medical script. So we could actually use. I was desperate. I was looking for anything that might be able to take the edge off of the withdrawal experience, of the
Yeah.
experience of coming off of. I didn't find much effect, and I didn't want to get into that cocktail situation. I didn't want to
Yeah.
get into that multiple. And so I quickly tried it, not much effect, and I got off it. I do know other people. We haven't seen many people have success with cannabinoids coming off of benzodiazepines as far as that goes. So people have tried it, but I haven't seen any research and I haven't seen anything, even anecdotal,
Yeah.
people talking about how that's been really beneficial. I think it's actually just adding to the complications.
I
One
like
of the
that.
things we run into is there's been a lot of medicinal attempts for adjunctive medicine to help people come off of benzodiazepines.
Mm.
There's flumazenils out there. They've tried that repeatedly, but there's a high incidence of seizures, and that's a very dangerous drug to mess with. There's some other ones we've worked at, but we've yet to see something that really helps. Honestly, the best process we have is a slow taper naturally and trying to stay healthy and stay clear as much as possible of adjunctive meds.
We'll come
Big
to that. We'll
surprise
come
there,
to
right?
that. No,
Big
no, no, no.
surprise. Yeah, I knew you're
Don't
gonna
go there
love that,
yet.
Stefan.
Don't go there yet, because we too know the answer.
I
I've got a
know.
strong interest in
Sorry to
to
jump the shark. Yeah, jump too
no, no, no,
quickly.
you're
Yeah.
doing everything well. But this is where my passion is. I need to hold myself
I
back
know.
because otherwise I go straight for the money there.
I
Because there is the
understand. I
solution. It's
understand.
staring us in the face and what
Yeah.
we can do about it. But I
Yeah.
think it's so important that we recognize that whatever psychotropic medication you use, there is a chance that you pay the price for it.
Yeah.
And the longer you use it, the harder it is to get off. So therefore, I think that is a generalization. Now, in your own experience, how long do you think? What is sort of the average journey of the people that you meet who have been on benzodiazepines? Can you link it to say, well, you've been on it 12 years, it takes you 12 months or 24 months to come
Yeah.
off? Is there actually a linear or some kind of time relationship?
Actually, no. We've let's put it this way. We don't know that there's not one. We haven't seen one. Typically what they say as far as the safety, realm is 2 to 4 weeks. You'll see that from most of the medical publications, meaning anything longer than taking the drug for 2 to 4 weeks can get into the dangers of developing dependence.
Hmm.
Okay, and that's what we're really concerned about here is dependence. Addiction's a different beast, and that
Love it.
also can happen with benzos. But it's the dependence that makes it more unique, and it's this nervous system dysregulation that happens that makes it more unique.
Yeah.
But we've seen that, and we've seen that happen repeatedly. So it's one of those things where I don't know. I think there's a factor there that comes into play,
Hmm.
about just But I think 2 to 4 weeks is what we've seen. As far as dosage and duration of taking the drug, I think most people are leaning to the fact that that probably has to do with how strong and how difficult the withdrawal may be. But we've not seen any, I can't say there's data on it. I can't say there's literature on it. I've
Hmm.
not seen that. And I think it's a very difficult thing to study because not many people have studied that.
Hmm.
We've just got them to recognize that this is the factor, let alone study.
Yeah.
But we also know there's environmental causes, there's genetic causes, there's so many factors that could play.
Yeah.
We have people that come off benzodiazepines, taking them years, no problem. Totally
And I can
clear.
explain that.
So,
I can explain that to
yes,
you.
I bet you can. Yeah.
There
And so
are,
we estimate about 30% of people may show dependence. And
uh,
maybe you can explain that, but the
yeah,
rest of them can come off just fine.
absolutely. Now let's be clear in the definition. How do you
Yeah.
define dependence, and how do you define addiction?
Good question. Great question. Addiction usually we often assign with more behaviors, craving, type of that. Sometimes more likelihood to use, um, I'm trying to think of the proper term to use for that. But sometimes criminal behavior, other behaviors that can follow because getting that fix, getting the craving, satisfying that is such a factor. With strictly dependence, when it's not associated with addiction, what we've seen is that that dependence is typically more just the effects of the drug without the craving. Okay, so like with myself, it's that I don't like the penalty of not having the drug because I get these symptoms, but I'm not craving to take more of it.
Yeah,
I just don't like the pain. I don't like the pain of coming off of it. So some
nice.
people do go back onto it, but more because of the effects, not because of an addictive property, if that
Yeah,
makes sense.
yeah.
Okay.
Addiction typically is defined as you doing something that in fact harms you, and you are well aware of it, but you
Yes.
do anyhow do it because you
Right.
want to get that high, or you chase that memory of the high that
Yeah.
was once upon a time there. So I think that's a nice description of
I think that's
addiction.
a really good way to put it. And with
Yeah.
benzos, to be honest, most people weren't, as far as the dependence goes, nobody was warned.
Yeah,
And that's the
exactly.
thing about it is, so, it's like people were told these were safe.
Yeah,
They were told repeatedly, still are repeatedly told these drugs are safe.
indeed.
And we now know that's not the fact. That's not true. I mean, at
Mm,
least for some people, it's
mm,
not safe at all. And
absolutely.
this is I mean, I want to make sure we don't underestimate, like I said, I'm 11 years still coming off the drug and still have neurological complications that affect
Mm,
me every day. Now, I'm rare. I'm rare to be 10, 11 years off and have those. I'll admit that. Most people heal much sooner than I don't want to frighten
mm,
people. But it can take that long to recover from this because of the neurological complications. And I made some mistakes along the way. So, and I can even tell you what those are, but I made some mistakes that probably are the factor of why I still have issues
mm,
at this point. But it's one of those things where I want to let people know this is severe. I have lost people along the way who couldn't take it. People that had to end things
mm,
along the way, and that's been happened multiple times in our community. We experience it all the time. Suicide
mm,
rate in our community is very high. And it's very difficult, and that's something we have
mm,
to face, and it's something we have to acknowledge is that this is that serious. It's that
yeah,
distressing to some people
yeah.
that they can't take it anymore. And that can be that difficult for people. So it's a warning to let them know, hey, that's why you want to be careful with these drugs.
But of course, there is a reason that a doctor puts you on it. We are not just waking up as
Absolutely.
doctors in the morning and say, hey, let
No,
me
no, yeah.
stuff up this person's life. You know what? I give him some benzos. Um,
True. True.
very few doctors are like that. And
Yes, I agree with you. I agree with you.
so, therefore, there is a good reason. There is a
Yeah.
suffering typically that let
Yeah.
that be post-traumatic stress. Let that, or in the old term for it, post-traumatic stress disorder. So we want
Yeah.
to push things into a corner, into a pathology sort of label, and then
Yep.
we can treat it.
Then we can
So
get a drug for it. Yeah.
exactly. That's unfortunately, that is
I know.
how medicine has become.
Yes.
Allopathic medicine, Western style medicine, we are looking for symptom patterns that we can treat with a drug or with a
Right.
knife or with
Yeah.
whatever it is. It is, we want a quick fix. And unfortunately, it's not just us, it is the expectation of so many people out there. You are not, who the hell cares about a healthy diet when I can have a GLP-1 agonist that I
I
inject and
know. Yeah.
suddenly the life is beautiful.
That one
40
concerns me
years of
too. Yeah.
mistreating my body go away because I can inject myself with a very expensive drug.
And yet we have absolutely no idea of any long-term complications of that class of drugs.
Oh, wipe your mouth out, you sarcastic person, you. We know it's all safe.
Of
And
course we do.
smoking does not harm your health, signed Dr.
Yeah.
Marlboro.
I always answer it with this one question. Question is, how do you decide if something's safe long term? Well, that's easy. You do a study long term. Okay, how long have these drugs been around? Oh,
Exactly.
about 2 years. So you've not studied these at the minimum 2 years, 1 year, six. It's not possible. So you've never studied these 5 years out, 10 years out. So don't tell me you have. And that was the same with benzos, is they're released before they can ever do a long-term
Absolutely.
study.
Absolutely.
So they
And I think,
don't know.
yeah, but I mean that's the problem nowadays. We want
Yeah,
immediate fixes. We want quick
I know we
fixes.
do.
There is
I know we do.
nothing. Oh, it is our attention span is getting shorter and shorter. So I
Yeah,
think the
we are
risk,
part of the problem. I'll admit, we
exactly.
want that simple solution.
My
Um, you
goodness.
know, yeah, anxiety can totally be managed, and I know we'll probably get to that with so many more holistic treatments. And
Absolutely.
that's what we do in my community at Uneven Life. That's what we do. We work with all these different holistic treatments
Mhm.
because we've learned the hard way what didn't
Absolutely.
work, you know?
I absolutely love it what you're
Yeah.
saying.
No, thanks.
I think it's time to go to where the money is, where the fun
Okay, go
is.
for
Come
it.
on. Let's first
I
of
love
all,
this.
what we both have a passion for it. So to start off
Yes, we
with.
do.
And I think we let's let's be clear that the things that we're likely now talking about might sound to some people a bit alternative, about woo woo wah
Mhm.
wah, and a bit sort of tree hugging, when in reality, any thoughts of you out there, listeners, viewers, you can just push those thoughts where they came from. Because we have got for virtually everything that we will now say, from nutrition to mindfulness to tapping to you name it,
Yes.
whatever we bring up with forest bathing, running around
Hmm.
naked.
I know. Yeah.
Sorry, I'm German, so we do that. We have got data. We have got data to show you.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It
So, and
is
I think that
there.
is so
Exactly.
beautiful. Okay.
Yeah.
So cool. Anxiety. First of all, my favorite thing to address anxiety would be actually your brain. Let me path the scene. We know in the past, depression and anxiety, it all has got to do with the serotonin. And if we can just give you a drug that somehow
Hmm.
manipulates the serotonin, maybe
It's a
has it
chemical imbalance. That
ex
was the
the
term they'd
chemical
always
imbalance.
use.
That was such a
Yes.
beautiful, beautiful idea. And
I
it
know.
helped us sell a lot of drugs. I mean, the
It did.
Prozac, all those kind
It
of
did.
things. Yeah, about that. Those of you out there who have not constantly listened to me rabbiting on about it, do you know how many percentage of serotonin are made in your brain? Only about 5%. 95% is made in the gut.
Yep.
Hmm. Dopamine, 50% made in the gut.
Yep.
If you look pound for pound or gram for gram, you have as many neurons in your skull as you have in your abdomen. Okay? So if you have got a gut feeling, now suddenly we are
There's a reason
talking.
for it.
Okay? And you treat your gut typically like beep, with a lot of ultra processed
Yes.
food, alcohol, throw in a few more joints,
Mhm.
hey, smoke, don't move,
Mhm.
don't hydrate, and basically have a lot of stress in your life and then really worry about everything. Oh, did I just say doom scrolling until 2 o'clock in the morning? Yeah.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Oh
Fantastic.
no.
What do you think your gut
It's
is
so
doing?
healthy. It's so healthy. Yeah.
So, have I set the scene enough?
You've set the scene very well, Stefan. Yeah.
So, what do you think is the role of nutrition? And if you were to
Huge.
teach
Yeah.
and share things with a friend who have just met, who is in on this journey, what
Yeah.
things would you try to teach them? Where are the low-hanging fruit where you are concerned?
I think there's some really basic ones. Let me first say, in the community that I run in Uneven Life, the first two people that I've really brought on who taught sessions outside of me and my managing director are a nutritionist who we now have running sessions in our community,
Yeah.
and I have a therapist now running sessions. She works with mostly holistic methods for for
Perfect.
reducing anxiety, and those are the two people now I have already on our team who are doing sessions. So I'm on the right track, I think, as you said.
Perfect.
But I think you've already nailed it with diet. Diet is massive. I think it's huge as far as how it affects us.
Hmm.
I believe exercise, it's like there's some, there's these really basic things we've known since we were two, but we just seem to forget. When I came off the drugs, one of the things I did, this is a perfect example of this, was I went to my doctor who prescribed the benzos to me, and he said, "You don't need to come off. These things are totally safe." I said, "Okay, you're not the guy for me." I had already figured out what's going on. I
Right.
finally went back to a doctor in the mountains who I used to go to, who I trusted. He said, "You don't need to come off them, but if you choose to, I will help you." And he actually did understand it was going to be hard, even though he felt I could keep taking it, which I disagree with. He knew it was going to be hard, but he told me I want you to wait 6 months. So he didn't want me to taper at all. He said, I want you to wait 6 months. I said, why? He said, you're not stable. And I wasn't. I was freaking out. And so I went back and I said, okay. He said, come back to me in 6 months and show me how you're doing. I started meditation.
Uh-huh.
I started exercising. I started swimming. I started yoga.
Uh-huh.
I started eating better. I did all these things because I was desperate to get off this drug.
Yeah.
And I did all that for 6 months. I came back in 6 months to that doc and I said, I think I'm ready. And he looked at me and said, yeah, you are. And so he helped me, came off for next 18 months. I tapered off Klonopin towards
Brilliant.
the end. And he was great with me, even though he didn't believe I had to come off. He was really good to work with because I trusted him, and I trusted that he knew what I was doing. But that's exactly it. I needed to get my body and mind healthy to
Absolutely.
do this journey. And that's
Let's
what I
stick
think a lot of people don't realize. You got to
absolutely.
get healthy. Yeah.
Let's stick with the body.
Okay.
And you let's stick with nutrition to start off with that.
Sure.
We know there are so many beautiful studies out there nowadays that show the impact of a change in nutrition on mental health. I
Yes.
always quote the Finnish study where they looked at prison inmates and they decided one day for a period of 2 to 3 weeks, just change the food from sizzlers and burgers to a more wholesome and better food.
Hmm.
What they saw is after 3 weeks that the rate of violent incidences had
Oh,
dropped by 30%.
wow.
So,
Yeah,
wow. Now
I
we have
know.
got similar data when it comes to adolescence and depression and anxiety. When we start tweaking the food intakes and change it from SAD, the standard American diet, or standard Western diet, if you stop beating
Yeah.
up the Americans, standard
Thank you.
Western
I
diets.
appreciate that. Not that we don't
that
deserve it, but I appreciate that.
then if you switch over to a Mediterranean food plan,
Yes.
suddenly
Yeah.
things start to change. And we
Hmm.
need to be quite clear about that. Most are, I give you all the pearls of wisdom here. Hey guys, you get the whole
Yeah.
free info here. Basically, it's the protein. We really want to see a decent protein intake, especially
Yes.
of the essential amino acids, because they are the precursors of
Hmm.
the serotonin, of melatonin for your sleep. If you look at L-tryptophan as an amino acid, so we want to have a decent protein intake. There about 1.2 gram per kilogram over 24 hours. We want fiber in you, fiber and fiber
Yeah.
from the whole
For
spectrum
the
of.
gut. Yeah,
That's
you need
right,
that to
because
keep that
it
gut steady. Yeah.
absolutely, that's what your bacteria love. And it
Hmm.
also, the fiber binds any toxins that are in your body. And trust me, there are shitloads of toxins
Yeah.
in you with modern life.
Oh, yeah.
So let's get rid of that. So protein, fiber, phytonutrients, eat the rainbow. End of the
Yep.
story. Fermented foods,
Well
free
balanced.
Fs.
Yep.
Okay. The fermented foods, fiber,
Yeah.
phytonutrients. Okay, it's written pH, but hey, who cares? Free Fs. So that's that. That's the nutrition and vitamin D, magnesium, selenium, zinc. That's where you
Yes.
want to see a functional medicine doctor or a nutritionist, someone who knows
Somebody who can run
about.
that panel and understands it. Yes, I totally.
Absolutely.
A lot
So
of our
that,
people,
yeah,
yeah, have actually started to go to. That's why I like talking to you today because a lot of people I work with have, not found their answers in traditional medicine in the traditional path,
yeah.
and they've gone towards more of the functional medicine, and that's where they found somebody who understood the entire body mind, concept, what's going on, what the effects are. And we've had a lot of success with that, with people that have
Exactly.
gone and sought that kind of. And I work with a couple doctors now who are both functional medicine doctors,
Yeah.
and they've helped educate me. It's
Yeah.
been very helpful to
Well,
work
Dee,
with
you
them.
nailed it earlier. You said it. About 30% of people really struggle to come
Yeah,
off benzodiazepines. It's the
right.
same with SSRIs, so with the Prozac.
Yes.
It's the
Oh,
same
yeah.
thing. There are some
Hmm.
people who have got a little headache for 2 days and say, "Yep, that's fine." And then there are others who are struggling and are sick like dogs.
Hmm.
Why is that? Because they are not prepared. I love that your doctor said 6 months of that, and that included the
Yeah.
nutrition. So by
Yes.
us actually addressing your gut and your nutrition and
Hmm.
of course the mindfulness, etc., that we're talking about in a
Yeah.
moment, suddenly you have got your body is actually ready to take on the challenge of coming off this
Yeah. And
medication.
I think that's why I mean, it wasn't an easy process, but
Mm.
that's why it was successful. That's why I was able to
Yeah.
come off the medication.
Brilliant.
Unfortunately, I did wind up being prescribed another drug along the process that really messed me up. And I don't know
Yeah.
if you're familiar with fluoroquinolones, but antibiotics that are
Yeah.
a certain class of antibiotics, and fluoroquinolones already have a black box warning about neuropathy. And when dealing with benzos, it is a horrible combination, especially coming off benzos. And I was prescribed a fluoroquinolone for what was presumed prostatitis, but turned out to be pelvic floor dysfunction due to the benzos. But I didn't know that, and the doctor thought it was prostatitis, and he gave me this fluoroquinolone, which actually detoxes you instantly, basically. Fluoroquinolone actually replaces the receptors on the GABA A receptors, and it's what's called flox. There's a term for it if you've been floxed, and it's almost like a cold turkey withdrawal from the drug. And we've had a lot of people that have done this, and that's what leads to the neuropathy sometimes. And so I had that. Another reason probably why I have protracted symptomatology is because, I did some things that I shouldn't have done. I finally went back to the Ashton Manual, which was our Bible back then. Dr. Heather Ashton out of the UK was the only one that really recognized the complications of benzos, and she wrote a manual that I would say 95% of the people coming off benzos used at that time. It was the only thing we had. And she mentioned that was the only drug in there she mentioned stay away from was fluoroquinolones, that
Ah,
class of antibiotics.
ah,
And I didn't read it. I didn't remember it. Let's put it that way
right.
when I was given that. So there are things along the way that make it worse. And you mentioned again, that's why more meds, just be careful. Any med can cause a complication. And that's my thing from the medication side is every medication has side effects, period.
Exactly.
It's
Yeah.
just a factor. And so it comes down to you have to know what those are and weigh those with the possible pros. I'm not against meds,
Mm.
but you need to be educated and you need to be made aware. And nobody was ever made aware of the long-term complications of
Exactly.
benzodiazepines,
Exactly.
you
Okay,
know?
so here we are. So let's say we have addressed our nutrition, and
Okay.
you have addressed it to not just band or listening to some rubbish recommended daily intakes. They are
Yeah.
just there to prevent you having scurvy or some disease due to malnourishment. That's what the cutoff is, basically, when you look at
Right.
vitamin C, for example. It's
Hmm.
between cutoff RDAs are 45 milligram, 90 milligram, depending on where you are in the world. And when in reality, you want to have probably a gram of vitamin C a day and it's hard to get often enough that from the nutrition. So you want to work with people who understand the difference between what is recommended in the Western medicine, which is typically those things just enough as far as health is concerned to not produce clear, obvious sickness, like scurvy in the
Right.
case of vitamin C. This is not for optimal health. So let's be clear about that. So let's say you work with people who know what they are doing. And then I think it will be significantly easier for you
Yeah.
to actually come off these medications. Start off with that. Having said that, there is still the underlying reason that you actually
Yes.
had these medications. And that
Thank you.
typically is
Yes.
anxiety. And that
Yeah,
typically is
typically. Anxiety number one, insomnia number two, which is often tied to number one. So, yeah,
exactly.
anxiety and insomnia are the two key reasons people take these drugs. Yeah.
So you're now throwing the dummy out of the cot with the benzodiazepine. So how the hell shall we live? My God, I will not sleep.
I know.
I'm
I know.
anxious. I'm terrified. What shall I do? D, tell me.
Change your life.
Ooh, just like
But it
that.
doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be that dramatic, but you start with the steps like you talked about.
Yeah.
Um, our world is not geared towards calm.
No.
We're just not geared that way. Our electronics, we have so much technology that's demanding our attention every
Yeah.
second of every day. We
Yeah.
got blue light, we got terrible sleep hygiene. We
Right.
got so many horrible things that are just destroying our mental and physical health at every turn,
Yeah.
as you probably know better than anybody. And you need to be aware of these things and at least know where you can make the changes to start making steps that improve your life. And it doesn't have to start huge. You can start small and say, okay, I'm going to stop doing this or I'm going to start doing this.
Mm.
But there are things you can start with. I have Certain things I do every day, certain things I know that I'm not going to let go of. I take a walk with my dog twice a day. I don't care what it is outside. I don't care the weather. I'm in a snowstorm. I'm walking my dog. And I never gave that up in my whole recovery because I know that kept me. And that was like you said earlier, it was I wasn't buck naked, but I was out in nature. And and I get out in nature and I get to walk and it's somewhat meditative. It's
Yeah.
just a great thing for me every day. So
Yeah.
what are those things that you know you don't want to give up, that you know that can help you,
Yeah.
that you can follow, that you can stay true to? That, like you talked about diet, everything else, there's so many different areas. And then anxiety, there's some very simple tools you can use. There's some great anxiety management techniques and
Yeah.
tools. And we always talk about your tool belt. Your anxiety tool belt is what I
Yeah.
teach in my community all the time. And you have those tools, you find the tools that work for you, 4 or 5 of them, and you always have them with you.
Nice.
Whether it's a breathing technique, whatever it is, like you said, tapping earlier, whatever the technique is, maybe it's vagus nerve stimulation, something that's going on that can bring you down a notch
Yeah.
from a really bad day, you
Come on,
know.
let's teach each other at
Okay.
least one technique. What's your favorite technique that you use in order to
Oh,
change your physical state?
probably my best technique. I go to a simple breath. I do
Nice.
box breathing sometimes,
Yeah.
so I'll do that sometimes, and I also do. A lot of times, it's actually simply going to a spot meditation,
Yeah.
and I can do it pretty much any place I'm at. And I have my go-to mantra is, and I'm not a man of strong religious, but I have some faith background, and it's let go, let God. And it doesn't matter whether you have a faith in a God or not, but it's basically saying let go of your false need for control and
Nice.
let life happen. And that's what it means to me, is basically saying, why am I signed so desperately to try to control everything? And that's where my anxiety really comes from, is that need for control. And it's to let go of that. And when I start doing that, I pull myself back a little bit. So those are probably my go-tos that I use. And I use a lot of those when I'm sleeping and everything else, but those ones I just pull out really quickly when I need. How about you?
Beautiful. All of the above, so to speak, but not enough, not enough.
Yeah,
I
me too.
think I became intrigued with breathing. I mean, as an anesthetist, for
Mhm.
crying out loud,
Oh,
I've
yeah.
been, I thought I know breathing. But then I learned a little bit more and I actually became a breath coach myself. So, and I experimented with all these kind of things. So I'm a big, big proponent. And just when we two were starting our interview, I asked you for 10 seconds and I
Mhm.
took a deep breath in through the nose. I breathed out through my mouth, did a gentle stretch on my neck. I did a certain routine. And that routine, I have done that so many times. The moment I do it, 10 seconds, I have reset my physical
Yes.
state. So I have learned, I've taught my body that, hey, this is now a switch and I'll switch it on purpose.
Great.
So, and but when you start off, it's hard. So therefore, there are routines
It
like the
is
box
hard.
breathing, as you
Yeah.
mentioned, which is the technique that you are using. Just
Mhm.
breathe in over 4, hold your breath
Yep.
over 4, breathe out over 4.
Yeah.
Don't breathe over 4, breathe in over 4. That's box
Yep.
breathing. Nothing
Yep.
magical. But magic happens when you do it because your
It
CO2
does.
rises in your blood
Yeah.
and you suddenly feel more calm. Do that 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I promise you, you will change.
I love that.
Now,
And it not just helps you with the breathing, but it also gives you a meditative focus.
correct.
The counting alone, it's kind of sneaks meditation into the process of the
Absolutely.
breathing. So
Yep,
you're getting a double benefit, you
indeed.
know.
And
Yep.
if the counting still doesn't work for you, count in another language.
Ooh,
Because now
very
you have
good.
to focus on the different
I
language.
guess I have to
And
fall on French. That's the only thing I can count in other than English is French. So I'm going to have to go with French.
no reason not to learn 50 ways of
That's
count
true.
to.
That's
So,
true.
because now suddenly you are focusing on something new, you're focusing on
Yeah.
that, want to remember that. And suddenly you are in the moment, you're no longer somewhere out there. So it's just if
Yeah.
you want to be sneaky and overcome your things. You talked about the breathing. I talk about
Yeah.
havening. Havening is a beautiful,
Yeah.
beautiful technique. And
Okay.
it goes along with the tapping. What havening is and tapping, we are using circuits that are built into our body. And when we look at, for example, a seal in the water, when it wants to go down and hunt fish, now it would not be great if its heart rate goes up massively because it goes for the oxygen much quicker,
Right.
and it takes far more time, it will far less time for hunting the fish. So
Mhm.
in seals, we've got a mammalian dive reflex.
Diving
So
reflex.
cold water into the face, or in us, we can use it, or the seal goes underneath, and the pressure and the cold will reduce the heart rate. And what is happening when you're stressed? Your heart rate goes mad. Fight and flight, you go mad. Your breathing goes mad. It's all faster, faster, faster. Now, would it not be nice if you could somehow tap into this kind of mammalian dive reflex? And yes, yes, you have it.
Yeah.
And the way we can do it is, for example, for those of you who are listening, right now I have my right hand on my left shoulder, left hand on my right shoulder, and I'm stroking down from my shoulders down to the upper arms. And just that simple method of stroking myself, I just keep doing that. I release dopamine, I release oxytocin. I know that simply spoken, my heart rate will very soon calm down. Now, that is sort of a technique that is often described. Personally, I like to show myself a bit more love. So same hand position, arms on your opposite shoulders or hands on your opposite shoulders. And then I give myself a huge bear hug. Really pull myself in. And I'm not silly. I'm honest now. I'm talking to the little boy in me who needed to hear that message. I love you.
Yeah.
It's gonna be fine.
Yeah.
Stefan, you're an amazing man. Look, you've gone for so much shit in the life. And I know it's of course you want to just run away and full of fear, and it's absolutely cool. I love you. You're such an amazing dude. Love you, love you, love you. And by just doing that, I've done that 15 seconds. That works for me better than the stroking of my arms. So I love the bear hug, which is just a variation of Havening. So that is on my shoulder. So we get quite a response there. But then when we look at where it works with the seals, it's in the face. And as a doctor, if I've got a child with a baby with a really, really high abnormal heart rate, we wrap them up and put their face into ice water. And that's equally if you've got a fast heart rate, a atrial tachycardia or something like that, a supraventricular tachycardia, then some people do rub their face or put ice water in their face.
Yep.
We're all using the same tricks. Now you can do that by rubbing your face. You don't need to tap. You can just start
Oh, that
rubbing
feels
your
wonderful
face
too.
and
Yeah.
actually do that. So right now, with my hands, I just rub circles over my cheekbones and over my forehead. And it's just a simple touch is actually triggering the same things. So we have good ways of switching things off.
We really do. We really do. And there's so many good ways to do this. And, this is just tapping on the tip of things,
Yeah.
of what we can utilize. And
Isn't it?
yeah, I don't know. It's
Fantastic.
just, it's
So we've
amazing
given you
because,
free. See, we've talked
yeah,
about
I know.
the food. We've given you free techniques to immediately break
Yep.
up an anxiety attack or this wave of
Oh, yeah.
neurochemicals. And let's figure it out. It is what we're experiencing with anxiety. These are waves of neurochemicals. And with every wave, if you're in the ocean and this wave is coming, and you can say, I hate you, wave, go away, wave. And you can feel guilty and anger and whatever to that wave. The wave doesn't care.
No.
So you might as well learn to dive underneath the wave or
Boy,
surf the
and that's,
wave.
yeah. Well, and that's exactly probably the number one thing I help people achieve
No.
is right what you say, which is acceptance. It's this is such a one thing we've noticed with a lot of people we work with is kind of that 5 stages of grief process. When they first find out that they're maybe dependent on these drugs or what's going to happen, they have the denial, they have the bargaining, they have the anger for sure. But I can tell you, once we get to an acceptance stage of, okay, so this actually happened to me. How can I get through this? How can I make the best of this time and make it? That's when I can really help them. But until we get them there, it's really hard because once you've accepted it, and you talked about riding the wave, and just that's what that is. It's that sensation, it's that feeling. Okay, I'm here. I got a wave of symptoms that came in. I got one today, this morning. Like I said, I'm not sure what caused it, but it just hit me today like a brick wall. And I have my left calf right now is spasming 20 miles an hour. I don't know how to stop it. It's just what it's doing. But this is not abnormal for me.
Yeah.
Okay. And that's the secret is I've been here. It will come, it will go, and I will be back, again.
Mm,
And it's like I know that, and that confidence and that knowledge helps me a lot. For
mm,
people that are just starting on this path, it's so much more frightening and terrifying because they're not used to. I get random pains, I get random things, my tinnitus is going nuts in my right ear right now.
yeah.
I don't care. I've had that for years. I get used to it,
Yeah.
and you just keep moving forward. And that's a big step of this is just
Mm,
finding that acceptance, finding that way to ride it.
yeah.
The more you fight it, the stronger it usually gets.
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. And again, we are all on this journey of learning. So for
Yes.
me, just listening to you, immediately I want to say hydration, higher doses of
Oh man.
magnesium,
Yeah.
and using vitamin B complex on the functional medicine side, whilst a neurofacial technique, a release technique, would be wonderful there. And these neurofacial, we've only recently recognize the power of fascia, which is the kind of grizzle that
Yeah.
sits around the muscle.
I
Now,
know that actually pretty well. I did yin yoga for a while,
uh, there
which
you
that's solely what it focuses on. And I loved yin yoga,
exactly.
which is, holding each position 3 to 5 minutes, and it works on the fascia. And
Yeah,
that's what you're working on.
exactly.
And my wife and I did that for a couple years. That was awesome. I loved that yoga because it stretched the
Yeah,
fascia, which
indeed.
no other really system does it
Yeah.
like that did. And that was a great way to
Exactly.
do it. So,
Flexibility yoga. I'm a coach for that as
oh,
well.
yes.
So there
Oh,
you
are you?
go.
Okay, there we go. So it's pretty,
I'm
yeah.
stiff as a
I
brick.
fell in love with yin yoga. It was like the best thing. I mean, I'll get my exercise elsewhere, but yin yoga was my meditative
Yeah.
body care. It's what I was caring
Yeah.
for myself,
Yeah.
you know?
But here we are. Please spell it out, though. It's not just us holding a position for a longer period of time.
Right.
It's the calm, deep breathing that we're doing.
Yes.
And we are
Yeah.
actually teaching your body to say, yes, it is safe.
Hmm.
It is
Yes.
safe. You can relax.
Yeah.
And it's that we are never giving ourselves that chance. We are always in fight
Boy,
and
not
flight.
today. God, not today. Yeah, exactly. It's ridiculous. I know. It's nonstop. And I think that's the other thing we help people is,
Yeah,
to tune out, turn off, tune out, and at least for part of the time, put down the phone,
yeah,
just like you said, be out in nature, go do things, spend time with family, go
yeah.
for a walk, just slow down your life a little bit,
Mm.
and it can make a big difference. Otherwise you're in that nonstop, spinning ride that
Abs-
has no exit, you know.
I loved it a moment ago. I saw your eyes lighting up when I said hydration. What do you think
Yes.
about drinking water? Is that of any importance, of any consequence?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I got my bottle right here. Absolutely. And in fact, one of the conditions we see coming off the benzos is we sometimes lose the thirst. And so you
Absolutely.
wind up dehydrating accidentally,
Absolutely.
and I found that with mine too. So I force myself, I have an app that actually not only tracks my food, but tracks my water. And
Okay.
I make sure I hydrate regularly. I used to drink water all the time, but
Mm.
this condition changed my thirst. And
Absolutely.
now I have to remind myself to be hydrated.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's not just a condition. I think we all, we're from the age of
No, I
30
agree. I
onwards,
agree.
we go down in our first perception. And
Yeah.
I'm not really sure why that is, but it seems to be quite an accepted fact that it is more and more difficult. And you might feel
Yeah.
something, but typically you think, oh, I'm getting a bit hungry. Or you're getting, I don't know, a bit bloaty or whatever you call it.
Yeah.
When in reality, your body is screaming, I'm thirsty. And
I
it
know.
just, you don't understand the language. And therefore, you actually are not following through. Guess what is happening? You suddenly, your body thinks, oh my God, if he doesn't listen, then surely in 24, 48 hours, we're dead. You
Yeah.
die. So,
Hmm.
can you
You can
imagine
go
that?
for weeks without food. You can go 3 days without water and you're gone.
That's right. So, can you
Yeah,
imagine that your
so
body therefore will increase a level of anxiety for you to actually
absolutely.
be out
Yeah.
there? And it shouts at
That's
you,
a good
drink
point.
something.
Yeah, I know. And another medic, I mean, like if you drink, caffeine or alcohol,
Mm.
you're actually having the opposite effect most of the time because it's actually dehydrating you as you're doing that.
That's true.
And people don't realize and they think, well, all the sodas and everything else, but you might be dehydrating rather than hydrating yourself when you drink those.
Yeah.
You
So,
got to be
and then we
careful.
need to come back to the nutrition because if we think
Yeah.
about our anxiety, what better to cause anxiety than a high sugar diet with ultra processed
Yeah.
food? Because, and I mean, guilty as charged. I
I knew
mean,
you were going to hit on sugar. I was waiting for you to hit on sugar. I know you're going to get there eventually because I was waiting for that one.
typically I start hitting on it first time around, but now just
Boy,
because
those highly processed carbs, they will do
oh,
a number on you.
oh,
They'll
isn't
do
it?
a number on you. Yeah,
And it's so
I know.
difficult because they are as addictive as cocaine, sugar
Yeah,
is, and it's
sugar
hidden
is
in
very
so many
addictive.
foods. So I think that
I
is so
know.
important because
It,
when you are on a sugar high, you're manic, you
oh
feel
man.
good. Oh yeah, come on, bring it on. And then very quickly insulin kicks in. Half an hour later, you have got that low. Now, that is the first part is anxiety. The second part is
Yeah,
depression. Okay.
yeah.
So you want stability in your brain, and that equals a healthy gut, not a leaky
Mhm.
gut, as probably half of the population have. Because the leaky gut also means that you've got a leaky brain. And guess what all
Mhm.
these toxins do in your brain? They cause mayhem. What do you think? Where do you
Yeah,
think your anxiety is coming from?
I know.
So you see, it might sound as if we are talking the same thing again and again, but they're all interlinked, these kind of things. So, and it's so beautiful to hear that. And we certainly, when we look at, I mean, the benzodiazepines, you and your group are
Mhm.
sort of instrumental of bringing that awareness out there. It's only recently that psychiatrists have actually also tackled the problem of the SSRI, sort of Prozac,
Yeah.
serotonin reuptake
Those
inhibitors.
are the ones that are really hitting now. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's
And
I work with a lot of those people that are more focused on SSRIs, and we're seeing some similar long-term
exactly.
complications in those too. And and the studies are being done on those too to figure out what's going on with those drugs.
Indeed.
Many of them asked me, it's like, why do you only, it's not just benzos, it's these. And I'm
Yeah.
going, I'm not saying it's not. My research is in benzos, so I have to stick with what I did. And I
And
try to explain it to them. It's like they want me to jump on the SSRI, and it's like,
yeah,
I believe there's problems there. I just haven't done that research. I'm a
exactly.
researcher in benzodiazepines, and that's what I
Exactly.
do. And so, but yeah, we definitely have seen, especially in some of the new SNRIs,
Yeah,
we have seen some complications, long-term complications that seem to mimic benzos and some of those other drugs. So
indeed.
yeah, I think all psychiatric medications need to be taken with care and
Exactly.
need to be
Yeah.
really with informed consent,
Yeah.
of what you're taking, the
Mm.
possible
Absolutely.
complications, which most of them don't.
Let's also, though, be clear. So we have talked mainly about the benzodiazepines under the understanding that we are talking about psychiatric indications. There are other indications like seizure disorders,
Yes,
where
yes,
maybe patients are with on purpose on these medications because that is one of the few things that actually
absolutely.
suppresses their seizures.
Yeah.
So we do not recommend you to actually go out there and say, "Oh, we now listen to Dee and Stefan. Oh, that's great. We're going to get rid of the
Thank
benzos
you.
there."
Yeah.
That's probably the last thing you want to do.
Yeah, I appreciate you bringing that up because I would like to address that because that's one of the things. I'm definitely not on a bandwagon to ban these class of drugs, and I
Mm,
never would assume though. These drugs are absolutely necessary. Alcohol detox, they're necessary. Seizure disorders, they're necessary. Emergency room, are they necessary? You get somebody coming in severe agitation into the ER, and you could give them some lorazepam and
yeah,
calm them down like that. It's a lifesaver.
exactly.
That's a lifesaver to have that. So, no, I totally believe that. And I think there are some people that need to be on these drugs long
Mm,
term because the consequences of
yeah,
their condition
yeah,
without them is that severe.
yeah.
I'm just saying they've been overprescribed.
Absolutely.
That's the problem.
Yeah,
They've been overprescribed. They were too easily prescribed. And unfortunately, we've caused problems on the back end because of that.
indeed.
And they need to be prescribed more responsibly.
Yeah.
And also, the other key thing is they need to be de-prescribed responsibly,
Oh,
which
absolutely.
means, and this is the one thing I got to say, is nobody should ever stop taking their benzodiazepines cold turkey. Never do
Absolutely.
that. Do not do that.
Why?
Work with your
We
physician.
both,
Yeah,
we
work
are
with your
preaching to the
physician.
choir here.
I
But you
know,
tell
but I
me
just want to make
why.
sure that that gets out there.
Absolutely.
Slow taper is the only approved method. Work
Yeah.
with a physician, slowly taper off the drug, learn how to do that. Do not stop taking benzos cold turkey. It actually can be lethal without medical intervention. It can kill you if you stop taking it. Same with alcohol.
Why?
The two
Tell us
only two
why.
drugs. Yep. Yep.
Tell us why.
Oh, why? I'm sorry. Yeah. Um, you probably understand the physiology better than I do on this one, but I do realize the body actually goes into a severe state. In fact, there's one, oh, this is let me use an example. It's probably the best way for me to say it. There was a man that was arrested for assault here in Colorado and put in jail, and he was on 6 milligrams of Xanax at the time. They took that away from him, and in about 11 days, he was dead. And it was a pure torture. And at one point, he was strapped naked to a chair and was trying to chew his own arm off to get through the straps.
Wow.
He was in that much of agitation. And finally, it was too late. I'm won a huge class settlement against the prison for it, and it was all this kind of things that went along with it. What I'm saying is that it does that kind of the GABA receptors when they don't have this drug anymore, you are in a constant state of excitation, fight or flight,
Yeah.
nonstop 24/7.
Yeah.
And the body never comes down.
Exactly.
And that's the problem. That immediate withdrawal happens. And alcohol can also kill you. Those are two of the drugs. I think there's maybe one other one, but there's only two drugs that kill you from cold turkey.
Yeah.
Not heroin
Yeah.
doesn't, cocaine doesn't. It's horrible, but they don't kill you when you suddenly come off them.
And
Benzos can kill you.
unfortunately, I mean, seizures are an indication for
Oh yeah,
benzodiazepines. Equally,
yeah.
when you now suddenly stop a
You
medication,
get
precede
yeah,
it with a withdrawal with alcohol and with benzos, you can get seizures. Now, a single
seizures,
seizure that is
hallucinations.
self-limiting
Yeah,
is,
yeah,
yeah, I mean, you might hit your head, you might bite your tongue, you might soil
yeah,
yourself, fair call. But unfortunately, sometimes there are seizures that don't stop. And then suddenly your brain gets into
yeah,
severe trouble with ongoing brain damage. A status epilepticus
yeah,
is a life-threatening disease. So
yeah.
there are these kind of things. So let's be
And that's
very clear
typically
here.
associated with the acute withdrawal. That's that
Yep,
first 4 weeks coming
absolutely.
off the drug. And it's usually seizures, hallucinations, and whole body tremors. And those are the
Absolutely.
ones that are unique to an acute withdrawal. That's where that neurological complication is different. That's what
Yeah,
lasts longer.
yeah.
But those are the ones that can make it so distressing. Yeah, people can lose their life because of the severity of it. And seizures are, yeah, can
Mm.
be very dangerous.
So
Um,
for those of you who are wondering, how do we get off it? I think the fair statement is talk to your GP, talk to your
yes,
psychiatrist. If
yeah,
they believe that it is the right time for you to come off them, to start off with that, because there's a reason that you're on these medications.
yeah,
And this discussion is sometimes a bit difficult. So please, if you're talking to your GP, please don't just have a routine appointment and say, by the way, I want to come off that. Most GPs are uncomfortable deprescribing or unprescribing because they have not been taught how to do that.
right.
And therefore, it's much easier to say, no, no, just stay on it.
Yeah.
You're going to be fine.
And
So
there are ways to talk to your doctor. And
tell
we
us.
actually support that. The
Yeah.
organizations we have out there, there are a lot of ways. In fact, one of my people, a nurse practitioner who's on my team right now, just wrote an article on our site, which is how to talk to your doctor. And so
Beautiful.
at unevenlife.com, just go there and you can see that type of thing. We have all that information on how to talk to your doctor, what
Mhm.
to take to your doctor to show them. And that's the research, the ASAM guidelines, these things that have come out recently
Yeah.
that physicians typically listen to,
Mm.
unfortunately, more than maybe your story.
Mm.
Most doctors like to see the literature, and when they see the
Mm.
literature, then or a medical association recognizing this condition,
Yeah.
they are more likely to say, okay, let me see what I can do. And you can always ask for a second opinion. You can
Mm.
always go to another physician and get a second opinion if you need to,
I like that.
because there are doctors that say, no, these drugs are completely safe. I want to keep you on it. And if you believe that's not okay, you can go to another physician.
Mm.
But I do not recommend anybody disregard medical advice because they still know more about this. And we need to please work with your doctor. Don't try to do it on your own. That's
Absolutely.
what's dangerous,
Yeah. As one of my interests is men's sexual health.
Okay.
And I looked at my own life, and I thought start of this year, I actually thought, well, I've been on an SSRI, I've been on Prozac, fluoxetine for, I don't know, 10 years, and
Okay.
I've gone through some rough times in the past, and
Yeah.
that drug suited me, and I was grateful for it. But I thought, I'm living the healthiest lifestyle I can possibly do right now. Is that drug still appropriate? And I made that call myself to
Okay.
actually say no. So I did taper myself off it. And
Okay.
especially since I had appreciated increasingly reading about it, that actually SSRIs can mess with erectile
Yeah.
function or dysfunction for that matter. Not that I had any issues there. I didn't think I would. But I also had a gadget a cock ring, for the lack of a better word,
Mm-hmm.
but with a lot of sensors on it. So in other words,
Okay.
we all as men, we should have nighttime erections, three,
Right.
four of them. And I was able to measure that. And I realized on the SSRI, I had, two and a half. And I thought,
It was
come on,
reduced.
I mean,
Yeah.
is that really it? Nah. So this was one of the
Yeah.
reasons that I chose to come off
Yeah.
it. And
It
um,
definitely has an effect. Yeah.
oh, absolutely. So, and I want to ask you two, three questions here leading into it like that. First of all, benzodiazepines and erectile dysfunction.
Hmm.
Do you have any data on that? And
There
on
is
the
some
flip,
data on it. Yeah.
and on the flip side, when you come off the benzodiazepines, how does that affect men's
Yeah.
sexual health and women's sexual health, if you have the data on that?
Absolutely. Yeah, both. Yeah, we have seen the effect. I can't cite the data right now, but we have seen the effect. We've seen it directly and anecdotally. The problem is that it does suppress libido also.
Hmm.
So not just functional, not just ED, but also the libido is affected significantly both in men and women. And so once the drive's affected, of course, that affects everything else. And that's
Hmm.
been a significant factor.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, coming off the drugs, it seems to still be one of those protracted conditions that does
yeah,
seem to linger.
yeah.
I've dealt with it myself, so I can speak to it too. But it is a factor. And I think most psychiatric medications play around with your sexual health.
Hmm.
I mean, that's what we've seen. And just you mentioned with the SSRI, and we've seen this repeatedly, that they do mess around with sexual
Yeah,
health. And we just have to pay attention to that and realize again, it's like that pro con list. It's like, well, here's the pros of this drug, but what are the cons? And these are the things you might be losing.
exactly.
There's a lot of things come. One of the big things we've had people coming off the drug, not trying to change the subject, but was actually dreaming.
Ah,
Benzodiazepines suppress REM and
of course,
SWS wave sleep.
of
And
course.
so I didn't realize I just thought I didn't remember my dreams. My wife would tell me her nightmares or dreams in the
Ah,
morning, and I never had anything to
ah,
say. And I
ah,
just thought I just didn't remember them
ah,
until
ah.
I tapered off my benzodiazepine.
Yeah,
And then wham, I get these night terrors, I get
yeah.
these nightmares because I'm not used to them. And
Ah,
it came back. Thank God it came back, and I now dream. But I didn't dream, I think, for 12 years
ah,
you know?
interesting.
And because I wasn't getting deep sleep. That's the problem with these benzodiazepines,
Mm,
especially taken for insomnia.
yeah,
And even some of the Z drugs too that have done the same thing, is that they suppress the really good sleep,
yeah,
And so they may not be providing you what you think you are. You think you're sleeping, but you never enter that REM or the SWS phase.
yeah. Which is such
Yeah.
an important bit. You're quite right.
Huge, huge. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's when your body repairs itself. Yeah.
In the deep sleep, you're quite right. But we
Hmm.
also need the REM sleep for other
Yep.
reasons. So you're quite
Yeah.
right. This is, and that is where we need to find a new equilibrium, a new
Yeah.
balance within our brain. And whilst we have gone away from the kind of balance of serotonin as the reason for
Yeah.
anxiety and depression, there is still a balance.
Exactly.
There is a
Yeah.
balance of a myriad of hormones, neurotransmitters,
Hmm.
chemicals, gases, nitric oxide.
Yeah.
There are so many things that we're only just getting an idea about how they all interact. But
Mhm.
I think there is a wonderful journey there waiting for you
Yeah.
guys. So whilst it might all sound a bit scary, it is also a journey of you taking back your ownership, taking back your
Yeah.
power, taking back the privilege of making choices and learning from them.
Yeah.
It's a far more alive state. And it
Right.
is a beautiful state to be in, a state of constant curiosity,
Yeah.
because you suddenly learn, oh, wow, I've changed my food plan. I feel so much better. And now I've learned a new tool in my toolkit for anxiety. Next thing you think, oh my God, maybe there's a new skill I can learn. Maybe those things that really
Yeah.
scared me, like finances or women or whatever scares you in your
I
life.
love that you said that because the curiosity piece, I think, is dead on. I think so many of us, especially on the drugs and everything else, and just in life in general, we lead with fear,
Hmm,
you know, and learning to lead more with curiosity and lead less with fear
isn't
is
it?
a wonderful journey, but it's a very rewarding journey
Oh, yeah.
because when you kind of let go of that fear somewhat and let it fall in the background and lead with the curiosity, life's pretty grand.
Isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot to be said. And I know this journey now, I still have symptoms, I still have complications, but I'm more curious about it now,
Yeah.
than I am fearful about it. This is just how I am right now. And that's
Mm.
the other thing too, is, and I think this feeds right into what you've been talking about, and I really appreciate that, is we adapt. We're amazing beings. And we heal ourselves, we
Mm.
adapt if you let it. We got to let ourselves heal. We got to, one of the things I try to help everybody with the symptoms coming off benzos is I said, long time ago on my podcast was see your symptoms as signs of healing instead of
Nice.
something negative. And it really makes a huge difference because
Nice.
that's really what's happening. It's your nervous system healing itself. But when it
Nice.
does that, it kind of shoots and misfires along the way, and it's going to cause a little bumps in the road. But it is your body healing. And when you visualize the healing,
Yeah.
then you don't see that pain or that cognitive distortion or whatever so
Yeah.
negatively. It's just your body trying to rewire. It's your mind trying to rewire. And I think that helps a lot because this is a process of healing and your body does heal. We heal from so many things.
I love that.
We really
Absolutely
do.
love that.
Thanks, Dave.
You're an amazing man. I
Oh, I
love
love
what.
chatting with you, bud.
I know it is. Here we are. We've both been through the wars, and we are
Yes,
now coming out the other side. And we are the new and improved versions because we have seen the
yes.
darkness. We have seen those challenges, and we
Agreed.
have been in some very, very, very dark
Yeah,
places with
yeah.
thoughts that we certainly didn't like and feelings that we even liked far less. But
Hmm.
we have learned radical self-compassion. We've learned to be curious. We learned that there is another day waiting for us where we can learn something new, where we can grow. And I
Yeah,
think that is the beautiful thing. So I think
agreed.
you are living as a role model for so many other
Oh,
people
thanks.
out there. I think we both are merchants of hope. And that
Oh, I
is
like that. Yeah.
exactly. We are both, I think, eh, you know, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
If you go through a lot of shit in your life, there must be a reason for it. It must mean that the gods really thought, okay, you're a badass. A, you can take it.
It's so
And
funny you
B,
say that's something I've exactly said. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you said there's a reason why I am one of those 1% that's
yeah,
11 years off and still have complications.
yeah,
And the thing I tell myself is because I do this now and I help other people,
mm,
and I'm not going to be as connected if it's 7 years ago. I'm going to
nice,
be connected if it's yesterday. And
nice.
because it's yesterday,
Yeah,
I can help people so much more. And it makes it not okay, but it makes it understandable and there's a meaning behind it. And that's how I see it, is that there's a reason I'm still in this. There's a purpose for it, you
beautiful.
know? Yeah.
Beautiful. If people want to know more about you and people
Hmm.
maybe want to even contact you or
Yeah.
read your book, now tell us about you.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
Sure, be happy to. The best place to find me is on our website, unevenlife.com. We have an online community there. We do coaching. We do all kind of work through that. And we have a huge bunch of content and resource and blog there about
Mm,
benzos, about recovery. I
nice.
do two podcasts, the Benzo Free podcast and the Uneven podcast. And my book is Benzo Free, The World of Anti-Anxiety Drugs and the Reality of Withdrawal, and it is on Amazon and other places too if you're looking for it.
Beautiful. Guys, look down there into the description of the YouTube video and of the podcast. All of the information of him is there. What have you got to gain? What could possibly hold you back not checking that out? Because the sheer fact that you have listened till now through this podcast and watched us here on YouTube, I commend you, but it also is a sign that you're ready for change, that you're ready to take the next steps. And it is time. It's time for you to figure out, who do you want to be when you grow up? And it doesn't matter if you're 17 or if you're 70.
Exactly.
Come along for the ride. It is a beautiful journey, I tell you that. Dee, thank you so much for your time. Look after yourself, brother. And I've got a feeling that this is not the last time that we speak with each other. I think there might be some further co-creations and collaborations coming on here.
I would enjoy that, Stefan. I really appreciate it. I would enjoy that.
And you guys out there, look after yourself and live with intention. Bye.
I never give up. I never give up. I never give up. Turn around.